ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's May there in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez signs agreements with Mauritania and the Gambia to strengthen cooperation against migration smugglers. Liberia's Supreme Court overturns a life sentence verdict on former Chief Justice.
I'm happy because my sister is not a murderer. Even though we have lost, but God be our judge. Our sister will be free today.
Côte d'Ivoire welcomes some 65,000 refugees fleeing armed conflicts in Mali and Burkina Faso. And the Center for Integrity Watch urges Nigerian government to fully implement International Anti-Corruption Conference report.
Well, what we need is to translate this particular provision into actual practice.
Talking about anti-corruption and efforts towards anti-corruption.
These stories and more coming up. Please stay with us.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
And many thanks for joining us. Welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. This edition begins with a report about Spain signing agreements with Mauritania and the Gambia to strengthen cooperation against migration smuggling to Europe and in favor of regulated migration. This came to light during a tour of the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to West Africa aimed at countering the influx of irregular migrations into his country. Imo Edit completes the story.
On Tuesday evening, Spain signed memorandums of understanding with Mauritania and on Wednesday with the Gambia for circular migration. These agreements establish a coordinated framework for regular entry into Spain based on labor needs, with a particular focus on young people and women. Spain also signed a declaration of intent with Mauritania to pave the way for agreements to strengthen their collaboration against organized crime, particularly human trafficking. This was highlighted during the meeting between Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Sheikh El Ghazouani. Spain is facing a significant increase in illegal migration arrivals, mainly through the Canary Islands. Between January 1 and August 15, 22,304 migrants arrived in the Canaries, a 126% increase from the same period last year. For all of Spain, the increase is 66%. Mauritania and the Gambia are major departure points for migrants. Senegal, the third and final stop of Sanchez's tour, is another key point on the West African coast. Thousands of people have died attempting to reach Europe in recent years. Spain has committed with its West African partners to promote safe, orderly and regular migrations and to ensure fair and humane treatment of migrants.
Imo added with that report. Meanwhile, the Gambia's Justice Minister and Attorney General Dauda Jallow says the government has had a series of consultations with various stakeholders on the draft constitution before it was gazetted recently. And this comes amid concerns from sections of the public and some civil society organizations that the government had not done enough consultations before gazetting the document. Speaking during a press conference in Banjul on Wednesday, the Gambian Justice Minister highlighted some of the consultative steps undertaken ahead of the introduction of the 2024 draft constitution.
Since 2020, when the draft was struck out, the drafting team from the ministry and IDEA have worked to adjust the different clauses of the draft constitution on which action was agreed by stakeholders. IDEA met His Excellency the President, Adama Barrow, on the 12th of January 2021 to brief him on progress and share thoughts about next steps envisaged to ensure that the revised constitutional document successfully sails through Parliament and is approved at referendum. IDEA and the ministry engaged with media editors as well as leaders of the Gambia Civil Society Transitional Justice Working Group, the Gender Platform, and the Youth Forum. The political parties that converge in Abuja, one of them is Dr. Sise. He was in opposition at the time, leading a political party. They were going through the constitution clause by clause, agreeing to disagree. So there was actually consultation. And clauses were discussed, agreements were reached, certain clauses to change. There were some stalemates on certain areas, and each round of consultation generated reports. And these reports are generated by international IDEA. an international NGO, who have no reason to give me a report that is not true.
Gambia's Justice Minister and Attorney General Dawda Jallow there speaking. And now to the Sahel region. The Burkinabe government is continuing with efforts to assist people injured in the Bazalogo attack in the north-central region of the country. The attack, which occurred on Saturday, August 24, resulted in dozens of deaths and injuries. In the capital and in Kaya, blood donation initiatives have been organized to help those in need. Here is a report by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voiced by Sankule Janko.
At 9 a.m. at the National Blood Transfusion Center, Rasmani Kafando, holding half a loaf of bread and an energy drink, has just donated blood. He did this to support the injured from the Bazalogo attack, who were evacuated to the Burkinabe capital.
I went to the emergency room yesterday where I also found relatives and friends. They really need us. There are many injured. We couldn't stay like this. People are dead. We have to save what's left.
Like Rasmani, dozens of people come daily to donate blood for the injured. Blood donation initiatives are being developed in Ouagadougou and Kaya, the capital of the North Central region. Celestine Bagoro is also a blood donor. When I saw the ad, I ran because it was urgent. And given the situation, I really shouldn't wait. It was necessary to come and give blood. Dr. Matthias Kuda, a general practitioner at the National Blood Transfusion Center, praises this wave of solidarity.
This must be said clearly. On ordinary days, we cannot have this great mobilization. We must hope that people continue to mobilize to save lives.
The exact number of injured and dead from the Bazalogo attack is still unknown. A government team has traveled to this locality, 45 kilometers from Kaya, to support the local residents.
Sankle Janko forced that report sent in by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba. In Niger, the transitional president, General Abdurrahman Chiani, has signed an ordinance establishing a registry for terrorists and their accomplices. According to the Nigerian press agency, the decree mandates that all individuals and entities involved in terrorist acts or other related offenses against Niger's strategic interests qualify to be registered. Here is Echi Atisu with the rest of the story.
On Tuesday, August 27, 2024, Niger's President, Brigadier General Abdurrahman Chiani, signed an ordinance establishing a registry for terrorists and their accomplices, according to the Nigerian press agency. The ordinance mandates that all individuals and entities involved in terrorist acts or other offenses against Niger's strategic interests will be registered. This administrative measure aims to strengthen mechanisms to combat terrorism and protect national interests. The ordinance specifies that actions leading to registration, including committing, planning, supporting, or facilitating terrorist acts belonging to a terrorist entity, threatening national stability, bearing arms against the state, collaborating with foreign powers to incite hostilities against Niger, and disseminating information that disrupts public order. Registration occurs upon the initiation of an investigation or judicial proceedings following a judicial conviction or at the request of intelligence services. Those registered will face financial asset freezes, travel bans within the country and abroad, and restrictions on commercial transactions. In cases of prosecution, individuals may be temporarily stripped of Nigerian nationality by decree with permanent revocation if sentenced to 5 or more years of imprisonment. A National Registry Committee will oversee requests for registration or removal and handle administrative disputes related to the registry.
Eche Atisu with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Over to Cote d'Ivoire, where more than 65,000 refugees fleeing armed conflicts in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other Sahel countries have been welcomed in the north of the country. This was contained in the latest report from the local office of the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, dated August 26, 2024. Francis Boniface tells us more.
The report of the local office of the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, said among almost all of these refugees, there are 56,686 people from Burkina Faso, which represents 51% of the refugees received in Côte d'Ivoire. Mali is in second place with 1,377 people. And finally, Niger and Mauritania, each with 8 nationals. The UNHCR report also stated that, and I quote, "Arrivals from Burkina Faso and Mali are currently registered as asylum seekers." End of quote. The humanitarian agency further stated that the main reasons for asylum seekers leaving their villages in Burkina Faso are armed conflicts, generalized insecurity, threats, intimidation, and attacks by non-state armed groups in the villages. Along the entire northern border strip, 16 prefecture capitals have been identified as reception sites. These include the town of Tubo on the border with Burkina Faso, which has registered the largest number of refugees with 14,327 people. It is followed by Teini with 8,074 refugees and Ouagadougou with 6,378 asylum applicants.
Francis Boniface with that report. Let's now take you to Nigeria, where the Nigerian government has been urged to fully domesticate the 2021-2024 International Anti-Corruption Conference report. This came up during a recent workshop in Abuja, organized by the Center for Transparency and Integrity Watch and the MacArthur Foundation. Dr. Omar Yakubu, Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Integrity Watch, emphasized the need for complete implementation of the conference recommendations from federal to local government levels. Usma Omar reports.
At the workshop, which held Wednesday in Abuja, experts including Professor Ladan Mohammed and Mrs. Nkemdilim Okereke stressed the importance of active citizen participation, transparency and accountability in both private and government institutions.
Explicitly in the Nigerian Constitution, Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph C of the Constitution of Nigeria, that provides for the right of citizens to participate in governance. So what we need is to translate this particular provision into actual practice.
Talking about anti-corruption and efforts towards anti-corruption, there is we have this group of people. When you talk about marginalized, talk about women, talk about young people, talk about persons with disability. These are the people that make up almost half or more than half of the population of Nigeria. And if they are not involved in the fight against corruption as it affects them, we might not really be making a headway.
The workshop highlighted the need for sustained efforts in the fight against corruption, transparency, and free and fair elections. Domesticating the IACC conference report is seen as a crucial step towards promoting transparency, accountability, and good governance in Nigeria. The event brought together journalists and experts to discuss strategies for effective implementation of the conference's recommendations. The call to action comes as Nigeria continues to grapple with corruption and transparency challenges. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Osman Omar, reporting from Abuja.
Staying in Nigeria, as the Patriots, a group of elder statesmen and eminent Nigerians, has set up a consultation committee with the aim of actualizing the new People's Constitution. Picking holes in President Bola Tinubu's position that tackling economic challenges was his preoccupation now, not a new constitution, the Patriots said with the 1999 constitution, it will be difficult to address the problems. Fielding questions from newsmen during the official inauguration of the National Advocacy Committee for the actualization of a new democratic people's constitution for Nigeria, former Commonwealth Secretary General Chief Emeka Anyakun stressed that no leader can succeed with the 1999 Constitution. Now, away from Nigeria, the Supreme Court of Liberia has overturned the life sentence imposed by Criminal Court A. George Roosevelt Willie on former Chief Justice Gloria Musu Scott and her relatives in connection with the death of Chalo Musu. WAD Arrows Darlington Pogba followed the proceeding and now reports.
The former Chief Justice and her 3 relatives sought an appeal before the Supreme Court of Liberia. Following 8 months behind bars at the Monrovia Central Prison, Chief Justice Sianejo delivered her verdict, saying there was insufficient evidence to link the former Chief Justice and her relatives to the crimes. Another contradiction the court cited was that the autopsy conducted by 2 Liberian pathologists, Dr. Benedict Cooley and Dr. Zogben Pade, clearly proved that male chromosomes were discovered in the fingers of the deceased, but sadly, all of those who were accused of the crime were all females. She proceeded as saying, therefore, that the defendants are hereby acquitted of the crimes of murder, criminal conspiracy, or as charged in the indictment. Following the pronouncement, these family members burst into jubilation, appreciating the Supreme Court for the acquittal.
I'm happy because my sister is not a murderer. Even though we have lost, but God be our judge, our sister will be free today.
Thank God. We thank the Supreme Court. We are very, very pleased with this decision of the Supreme Court. And we thank God for the lawyers. We thank God for the detailed presentation that was made to let the public know the details thereof and the basis.
Meanwhile, Maryland County Senator Blebo Brown says they will pressure the Ministry of Justice to find the real killers of the late Shadow Musu.
If we had any other ruling other than this, we would have been surprised. The initial ruling left a lot of doubts, and that's why we appreciate the decision of the Supreme Court. However, we're still not happy that the killer, the actual killer, is still alive. And so the county, the family will be pushing the Ministry of Justice to set in motion a framework that will identify, arrest, persecute, and incarcerate the actual killers of Charlie Musu.
State prosecutors, however, refused to speak on the acquittal of the former Chief Justice and her family members. For Newslink on West Africa Democrats Radio, I'm Darlington Popa in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez signs agreements with Mauritania and the Gambia to strengthen cooperation against migrant smugglers. Liberia's Supreme Court overturns a life sentence verdict on former Chief Justice. Côte d'Ivoire welcomes some 65,000 refugees fleeing armed conflicts in Mali and Burkina Faso. The Center for Integrity Watch urges Nigerian government to fully implement International Anti-Corruption Conference report. We do have the press review, guest interview, and the sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Thanks for being with us. As a reminder, we're streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's remain in Liberia, where the former Liberian Chief Justice Gloria Musu Scott, whose murder sentence was overturned by the Supreme Court on Wednesday, has underscored the need for judicial reform. She spoke Wednesday after following a release from the Monrovia Central Prison.
They put their reputation, their professional career on the line to say we don't believe that you or any of your family members And they were vindicated by the government of Liberia pathologist who said he saw DNA, a foreign DNA, but he threw it away. We're vindicated by him. He proved our case. Through his lies, he proved our case. You will see DNA, you will discard it. Those are his words, they're in the court record. And not yes, so we say, God, we say thank you to the lawyers. What about somebody in Kaloke? What about somebody in Lofa? So to the civil society organization, or the lawyers, we still have work to do. I rejoice here today, my family rejoice, but the work is there. There's a lot of things, there are a lot of innocent persons in jail in this report.
That was the voice of Liberia's former Chief Justice, Councillor Gloria Musu Scott.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Nada Tete in the Ghanaian capital, Accra, for the press review.
Front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper, boosting regional security. We must unite to fight terrorism. President Akufo-Addo to African nations. Now to the Daily Guide newspaper, front page, payroll monitoring saves Ghana 344 million Ghana cedis. Minister tames a Black West bully pulpit tactics. Now to the Daily Analyst newspaper, Ghana needs a licensed driver, Mahama tells Bawumia. Also, Otumfuo distools 3 chiefs over Galamsey. Kolebu to partner Gamanche for 24-hour pharmacy project. And Mahama can't debate me with his poor track record. Baumia fires. And that'll be it for the Daily Analyst newspaper. The Daily Post. Baumia snaps Chief Imam. Also here, EC playing with fire. Mahama Omane Boama warns as electoral body produces dubious voters register. The Daybreak newspaper here, Ghana's economic outlook favorable. That's according to Deloitte. That's it for the Daybreak newspaper. The Anchor newspaper, Baumia to invest in solar energy. Initiative to reduce cost of electricity by 50%. Also here, immigration officials in massive extortion at airport. The Daily Searchlight newspaper, front page, TUC will take a hard stance for workers' welfare. That's according to the newly elected chairman of the Trade Union Congress, Bernard Owusu. Another story on the front page of the Daily Searchlight newspaper, non-communicable diseases kill 17 million people each year before age 70. The Chronicle newspaper, front page, Galamsey is not illegal in Konongo. That's according to the residents. Also here, don't use your committee as a bully pulpit. Kojopon Nkrumah tells Okujeto. We'll end with the final newspaper, front page. We've achieved significant milestones in job creation. That's according to the Minister for Labour Relations and Employment, Ignatius Bafwewa. And also here, next of kin cannot automatically inherit bank accounts. That's according to the Bank of Ghana. And irrigation over inputs for food security. That's according to an agroeconomist, Dr. Abu Zakar. And that'll be it for what the dailies are reporting in Accra. It's back to you.
Thank you, Nadia Tete, for the press review.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest segment this afternoon focuses on the Supreme Court of Liberia's latest decision to overturn a life sentence imposed by Criminal Court A. George Roosevelt Willie on former Chief Justice Gloria Musu-Scott and her relatives in connection with the death of Chalo Musu. In June 2023, the former Chief Justice and 3 other family members were arrested and indicted in connection with the death of Chalo, the niece of the former Chief Justice. Councillor Tiawan Ganglo is a human rights lawyer and former president of the Liberian National Bar Association. He speaks about the legal implication of this latest ruling.
In the lower court, the decision was against the former Chief Justice and 3 other women who were accused of murder. The Supreme Court then, in its power to review all cases that come from the lower court, reviewed the case and determined that the evidence was not sufficient to affirm the judgment that came from the lower court for several reasons. One of which was that there was evidence provided by 2 experts, a pathologist representing the government of Liberia who examined the body, pathologists presented by the defense that also examined the body. The pathologists that examine the body talk about DNA and did not include the DNA of a male or new male whose DNA was found on the finger of the deceased. The pathologist presented by the defense, that means the former Chief Justice and others, said he found a male DNA on the finger of the deceased. The pathologist for the government then came back as a rebuttal witness, but actually confirmed that fact. He said, according to the record, that yes, indeed, he too found DNA of a male, but he didn't feel it was significant for him to testify to that. And the court saw this, among other discrepancies in the case, as a big reason for creating doubt, because all of the defendants were females.
Councillor, how would you term the Supreme Court's decision in the legal dispense of justice, especially into this matter?
Now, in this case, justice was done for the accused persons, but justice is still not yet done in terms of identifying and punishing the person who murdered the late Chalo Musu. To the extent that the evidence shows and is confirmed by even the state pathologist that there was a male DNA, much work needs to be done by our police officers. The investigation should continue until that unidentified male is found and prosecuted.
How can you tie this to the political situation on the basis that the former Chief Justice and others were indicted by the former regime, and now a new government came to power and she's been set free? Quote unquote, that she reportedly represented the current government when it was in opposition.
Okay, so that is a reasonable presumption, but that would have been valid if she had been pardoned by the current president in power. She was not pardoned by the president in power. It was through the judicial process. And let me say, some of the justices were appointed, and the current Chief Justice was appointed by the former president as Chief Justice. So if it was a regime thing, then the party in power has a minority on the bench, right? So it was purely based on the evidence.
Councillor Tiawan Gonglo is a human rights lawyer and former president of the Liberian National Bar Association. Here is Sankule Janko with sports.
The Malian Football Federation, FEMAFOOT, has officially announced the appointment of Tom Sanfei as the new head coach of the Mali national team, according to AfricaSoccer.net.com. This marks a significant turning point for Malian football as the team seeks to elevate its performance on the international stage. Sanfei, a seasoned coach with experience in various countries, brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the role, according to media reports. His previous stints in countries like Gambia and Philippines have showcased his ability to develop teams and achieve success. The 51-year-old guided Gambia to their maiden Africa Cup of Nations AFCON appearance in Cameroon 2022, leading them to a quarter-final finish. Sanfei can boast of an enviable experience on the African continent, having previously worked in Tanzania, Nigeria, Togo, Namibia, Malawi, Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. The Malian Football Federation has expressed confidence in his ability to lead the Eagles to new heights. Elsewhere, the opening ceremony for the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games took place in the Palais de la Concorde and the Champs-Élysées, kicking off 11 days of para-sports, according to media reports. The first ever Paralympic Games in France opened with a stunning opening ceremony taking place outdoors for the first time in history, just as it happened last month in the case of the Olympic Games. About 4,400 athletes from around the world are competing across 22 sports, sharing the excitement of para-sports with spectators for the first time in 8 years, Village Square reports. Athletes from a record 168 delegations paraded in the iconic Palais de la Concorde and Champs-Élysées in front of supporters who cheered them on. That's it for sports. It's back to you.
We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Krista Mukidi and to Maudo Juf for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in